The pines should not have broken so easily. They had stood on the northern slope for decades, tall, rough-scaled trunks that survived blizzards, rock slides, and the weight of heavy winter snow. Yet now many of them lay snapped in half, scattered like splintered bones across the mountainside. And the snow, thick and heavy on their fallen branches, remained perfectly frozen. A wolverine named Rask climbed over a shattered trunk, his claws digging into the bark. His dense fur, dark with lighter patches along the shoulders, bristled as he scanned the forest. The cold here was different. Not the cutting wind of winter, not the dry chill of high altitude, a stagnant cold, a cold that refused to move. Rask sniffed the air. It tasted wrong. No scent of sap from the broken pines, no scent of damp soil, no smell of warming snow, though hours had passed since sunrise, only a faint metallic trace that crawled at the back of his throat. He climbed higher up the slope. As he moved, he noticed something unsettling. The snow didn't shift beneath him. Normally it would clump, collapse, or sprinkle loose crystals down the incline, but now the surface stayed rigid, almost crusted. His paws left shallow impressions instead of deep holes. He pressed harder. Still the snow resisted. Rask narrowed his eyes. Snow always softened under sunlight. Even in deep winter, the top layer grew damp by midday. But here, nothing melted, nothing warmed. The white surface glowed faintly in the light, but remained stiff as plaster. He approached a pine stump snapped cleanly in half. The fracture looked unnatural, not torn by wind or lightning, but forced apart by pressure from below. Rask sniffed it again. No sap. No freshness. As though the tree had died long before it broke. A distant noise made him freeze. Metal. Not loud, not close, but distinct enough to cut through the still forest air. Rask scaled a fallen trunk and climbed onto a jagged rock. From there, he could see the far edge of the forest, and the small group of humans working near the clearing. They wore thick jackets, helmets, and bright gear. Snow machines and drilling rigs stood around them. One machine emitted a low hum that vibrated faintly through the ground, making Rask's whiskers twitch. He watched them. The humans weren't behaving normally. Some knelt in the snow, examining it close up, scraping away layers with metal tools. Others pointed at a device showing digital readings. Another checked a thermal camera, then shook his head in disbelief. Several trees near them had toppled over. Snow around the trunks was perfectly sculpted, unmelted. Rask slipped between the rocks, moving closer. The hum deepened. He felt it in his bones. Below the surface, something was shifting. He reached a narrow ridge where the pines thinned. From here, he looked down at the clearing. A woman in an orange jacket stood over a shallow pit they had dug earlier. It was filled with snow that hadn't even softened. She pressed a gloved hand against it and recoiled. The snow stayed perfectly dry. Rask narrowed his eyes. The humans spoke quickly. Their breaths froze visibly in the air despite the sunlight. One pointed toward the broken pines, tracing invisible lines across the slope. Another checked a map, comparing it to digital readings. Then Rask heard a new sound. A crack. Soft at first, a single snap from somewhere beneath the snow. He looked down. The ground trembled subtly under his paws. Not the vibration of wind, not an avalanche's rumble. A pulse, a pressure wave rising from below. Rask tensed. The snow beneath him lifted only a centimetre, then settled again. He backed away quickly. Another pulse followed. Stronger. Nearby pine trunks quivered. A powdery mist drifted upward from the snow in a thin ghost-like cloud. Rask hissed under his breath. The snow wasn't melting because the heat wasn't reaching it. Something beneath the mountain was pulling warmth downward. He climbed higher, seeking stable ground. But as he moved, he felt the pulses becoming rhythmic. Slow, deep, like something breathing beneath the frozen crust. Down at the clearing, the humans reacted too. One scientist dropped her equipment and shouted to the others. Two ran to the drilling rig, shutting it down immediately. Another grabbed a radio, calling for evacuation. But even their movements were wrong, too slow, too heavy, as though the air itself thickened around them. Rask's fur rose along his spine. A sharp crack split the stillness. The snow near the broken pines fractured, revealing a long, jagged seam beneath the surface. A thin stream of cold vapour hissed upward, frosting nearby branches with a glassy sheen. Rask backed away, claws gripping the frozen earth. More cracks formed, branching in every direction. The snow didn't fall apart. It broke like a thin crust of ice, revealing deep recesses beneath. The ground sank. Not everywhere, only in circular depressions, as though pockets of empty space had opened under the forest. A pine, half broken earlier, tilted further, then dropped into the depression, disappearing silently into the powder with a heavy, muffled thud. Rask flinched. The humans panicked. One slipped and fell. Another tried to pull him up as the snow around their boots sagged inward. Their machines toppled slowly, as if gravity itself had thickened. The Wolverine's instincts screamed at him to run, but he stayed still for one more moment, listening. The pulses continued, deep, regular, endless. And Rask finally understood. The snow wasn't refusing to melt. It was being drained, its warmth stolen by something growing beneath the mountain. He turned and scrambled up the ridge, climbing quickly, silently. Behind him, another tree groaned as its roots were pulled downward. Snow cracked in wide sheets. Humans yelled. Equipment toppled. The mountain exhaled a long, icy breath. Rask raced toward the upper forest, knowing this. The pines had broken from pressure below. The snow had refused to melt because the ground beneath was swallowing heat. And whatever was rising from deep under the frozen plateau, it had only just begun. Rask ran. Not out of fear, Wolverines did not fear easily, but because something primal, older than instinct, older even than his species, told him that the ground beneath his paws was no longer trustworthy. The mountain had changed, the snow had changed, even the air felt altered, thin and unwilling to carry heat. He scrambled higher onto the ridge, claws biting into the bark of a leaning pine. The trunk quivered faintly beneath him, emitting a soft, dry groan. It felt brittle, hollow, as if the inside had been drained of moisture long before it snapped. Rask paused, chest heaving, whiskers twitching. A new sound reached him, not sound exactly, but vibration. A long, low roll beneath the snow, a deep grinding, stone rubbing against stone far below the forest floor. He flattened his ears. This wasn't wind. This wasn't normal mountain shifting. This was pressure. Huge, rising, ancient pressure. The snow near the clearing cracked sharply, splitting in a straight line that extended tens of meters in both directions. The human closest to it jumped back with a shout that reached Rask as only a muted puff in the cold air. The crack widened. Snow didn't collapse into powder. It tore like a rigid sheet, breaking apart in heavy slabs. Beneath the crust of white was not soft powder, not soil, but a dark void. A hollow chamber only a meter or two down. Rask stiffened. That chamber had not been there yesterday. A metal tripod near the humans tilted suddenly, one of its legs sliding into the gap. The scientist holding it let go and stumbled backward. The entire structure slipped into the crevice without a sound, vanishing like it had fallen into a throat. Steam rose from the opening. Cold steam. Snowmelt that should have been liquid was freezing instantly into mist. Rask sensed it. The mountain was draining heat downward. He moved along the ridge, stepping from boulder to tree stump. Every few meters, he stopped and listened. The pulses continued. Slow, rhythmic, almost like breathing, but not animal breathing. Geological breathing, pressure cycles, subsidence waves. A large pine below him suddenly lurched. Rask's eyes widened. The ground beneath it sank. The tree tilted at an impossible angle, roots groaning. Snow cracked and peeled away from its base in massive white sheets. The pine held for a moment, frozen mid-fall, then dropped into a widening depression. A dull, heavy thump followed, muffled by the snow. Rask backed away until his hind legs brushed a rock with better integrity. He watched as more trees around the clearing sagged inward. One human pointed at the slope, shouting words Rask couldn't hear. "Subsurface cavity! It's expanding! We need to pull out! The whole section is unstable!" Two of them grabbed boxes of equipment and began running upslope. Their boots sank deeper into places where the snow suddenly softened beneath the crust. One fell as a hidden pocket collapsed, burying his leg to the knee. His partner pulled him out violently, and together they scrambled to safer ground. Rask's gaze fixed on the largest machine, the drilling rig. It vibrated violently now. Its supports sank several centimeters. Lights on its control panels flickered erratically. Then the hum turned into a sharp metallic rattle, a pressure release. The rig vented steam, not upward as it should, but sideways, sucked into the nearest fissure as though the void below demanded every molecule of warmth. Rask took 2 steps backward. The snow beneath the machine dropped out entirely. The rig listed, sank, leaned, and then vanished half its height into the ground, swallowed by collapsing earth. The humans panicked fully then. One threw down his radio and ran toward the tree line. Another dragged the last of their equipment toward the trucks parked far downhill. Someone screamed for a retreat, their voice ragged and breathless. But the slope was changing faster than they could run. The void beneath the forest widened. Snow cracked around its edges. Entire slabs slid inward. Trees fell in slow, helpless arcs. The air filled with frost particles drawn toward the depression. Rask moved higher again, chest brushing cold branches. His paws felt the vibration of the next pulse before it happened. This one was stronger. The entire mountainside shook. Snow lifted in a small wave, just centimeters, then dropped in unison. The vibration rippled outward, causing cracks to shoot across the forest floor like white lightning. A young elk at the lower ridge stumbled in terror, hooves skidding across brittle snow. It bolted uphill, almost colliding with one of the fleeing humans. Birds exploded from treetops in a silent, desperate cloud. A fox darted between boulders, fur spiked with frost. Even a massive moose lumbered clumsily uphill, abandoning the lakeside without a backward glance. Rask stared at the animals. Predators and prey all fleeing the same place meant one thing. The mountain itself had become dangerous. Below, the humans reached the snowmobiles, but too late. The ground near the machines cracked open, splitting the forest floor in a long curving line. Snowmobiles sank halfway, their front ends dipping into the void. One human tried to pull a vehicle free, but the machine lurched as the snow beneath him collapsed, pulling both downward with a choked cry. His partner grabbed him by the collar and dragged him aside at the last second. Together they stumbled away, abandoning everything but their lives. Rask turned from the slope. He knew the forest well, every den and hollow, but the terrain he trusted was changing beneath his paws. The ridge that once supported the old pines now vibrated subtly with each pulse. He sniffed the air again. Still no scent of melting snow. Still cold, unmoving. Stale, and beneath it all, the metallic tang of something old exposed to open air for the first time. The ground behind him groaned. Rask spun. The initial depression had grown into a wide basin, 20 meters across, dipping as though the earth had inhaled deeply. The basin's edges crumbled, feeding more snow into the hollow. Then Rask saw something new. Faint wisps rising from the bottom of the depression. Not smoke, not steam. Frozen vapor. Fog forming from air hitting something so cold it robbed heat instantly. The void below wasn't hot. It was freezing. It was stealing warmth. And the snow wouldn't melt because the ground beneath was colder than ice. Far colder. Cold enough to pull energy out of the surface faster than the sun could warm it. Another pulse rolled through the mountain. A louder crack followed. 3 pines fell at once. Rask didn't stay to watch. He ran toward the upper forest, snow crunching faintly under his paws for the first time all morning, a sign the crust beneath him was finally weakening too. Behind him, the basin widened again, swallowing more of the forest. The mountain was collapsing into a network of deepening voids, ancient chambers where cold air had accumulated for centuries, waiting for the wrong drill, the wrong pressure, the wrong disturbance. The snow didn't melt because warmth no longer belonged here. And as Rask disappeared into the safer heights, he knew the forest would not survive the next pulse. Something beneath the mountain had opened its lungs, and it was breathing in reverse.